Om Namo Narayana, and welcome back to our reading of the Naraja Parivrajaka Upanishad. Today we are finishing up chapter 8. We are starting with verse 21, and truth be told, there's only 3 verses here, but they're rather long. This particular Upanishad has some really long verses, and I sometimes wonder if that's completely accurate. If they really are long, even though other Upanishads aren't written like this, or if it's just the translation to put it into English just causes things to be long, and they may add things like details so that we may understand stuff better. I'm never really too sure about that. Anyways, here we go. As the Turiya Turiya, being the one state of bliss, is incapable of subdivisions in the individual, collective, and partly individual and partly collective aspects, the Turiya by itself is not of a fourfold nature, but only three, excluding the Turiya Turiya. The threefold nature of the Turiya may be explained thus. As there are distinctions in external objects, the knower of Brahman perceives them with his senses, but without distinction. This state is the Turiya Jagarana. The Atman who experiences this state individually is the Turiya Vishva. Collectively, it is the Turiya Viraj. Partly individual, partly collective, it is the Avikalpa Uttar. When the knower of Brahman, with all sense activities abated, perceives the oneness of the self with Brahman by his mind alone, it is the state of Turiya Svapna. The Atman who experiences this is the Turiya Taijasa. When the person is in distinctionless deep meditation, Nirvikalpa Samadhi, and remains as if in a state of suspended animation, it is the state of Turiya Susupni, and the experiencing Atman is the Turiya Prajna. Here is the distinct precept that the Turiya Turiya is not at any time gross wisdom, as it is not the Otrotir, which is the same as Vishva Vishva, and the Viraj Viraj, experiencing the Jagrat Jagrana state, nor indeed the subtle sentience, as it is different from the Taijasa, Sutra, and Anuj Natur as the Svapna Jagrana state, nor pure consciousness, as it is different from the Otir Avikalpa, the same as the Vishva, the Raj, and the Turiya of the form of consciousness disclosing the presence of the Jagrat, Jagrana, and other states, nor anywhere else. It is not non-consciousness, as it is far away from the Anuj Natur Otir, identical with the Taijasa Vishva and the Sutra Viraj that are without outward perception in the Svapna Jagrana state, nor of both gross and subtle consciousness, as it is outside the scope of Otir Anujnai Karasa, identified with the Vishva Prajna and the Viraj Bija of the Jagrat Svapna state, which is outside the province of true knowledge, nor exclusive intelligence, as it is not within the scope of Anujnatir Anujnai Karasa, identified with the Taijasa Prajna and the Sutra Bija of the form of exclusive intelligence functioning in the Svapna state, and it is never perceptible, as it is beyond the range of the Anujnatir, identified with the Taijasa, and the Sutra, deluded by the vision created by the mind in the Svapna state. It cannot be identified, as it is different from the Anuj Karasa Anujnatir, identified with the Prajna Taijasa and Bija Sutra, which can be known only through the ignorance of the Atman in the Svapna state. It cannot be grasped, as it is different from the Anuj Karasa Otir, identified with the Prajna Vishva and the Bija Viraj, which cannot be grasped through the ignorance of the Atman in the Svapna Jagrana state. It is incapable of being expressed, as it is different from the Anujnatir Avikalpa, identified with the Taijasa Sutra Turiya, which manifests the presence or the absence of the Svapna Jagrana and other states in the Svapna Turiya state. It is beyond thought, as it is outside the Anuj Naikarasa, identified with the Prajna, and the Bija in the Svapna state, having only the recollection, I know not anything of that state. It is incapable of being given a name, as it is untouched by the perception of the Anujnai Karasa Avikalpa, identified with the Prajna Bija Turiya, that could be named as the witness of the presence or the absence of the Svapna Jagrana and similar states in the Svapna Turiya state. It is also the essence of the conviction in the one Atman, as it is different from the perceptions of the Avikalpa Utir, identified with the Turiya Vishva Viraj, experiencing the Turiya Jagarana state. It is the annihilation of worldly life, as it cannot bear even the smell of the Avikalpa Anujnatira, identified with the Turiya Taijasa Sutra, which in some cases does not put an end to worldly life and which experiences the Turiya Sapna state. It is quiescent, as it differs from the experience of the Avikalpa Anujnai identified with the Turiya Vraja Bija, experiencing the Turiya Sapna state. It is the auspicious one, as it is the same as final beatitude, Kaivalya, in the disembodied state, and is the non-dual one, as is of the form of the supreme non-dual state without a counterpart. This the knowers of Brahman consider as the fourth, the Turiya Turiya. It is the same as the Brahma Pranava. This should be realized, and not any other called Turiya. This Turiya Turiya is the prop to the seekers after liberation, as the sun. It is the self-effulgent, it is the ether of Brahman, as is without a counterpart, and it always shines, as it is the transcendent Brahman. And thus ends this chapter. So, that was very complicated, and I am actually going to do something I've never done before, which is reread it. But what I read the first time included a lot of stuff in parentheses, which made it complicated. And I decided to do that because lots of these words are being used previously in the last few videos, in this last few part, so I wanted to keep the flow going. But I'm now going to read it without any of the stuff in the boxes. This may make it a little more easy to understand. and you'll see just how much shorter it is on the second read. As the Turiya Turiya, being the one state of bliss, is incapable of subdivisions in the individual, collective, and partly individual and partly collective aspects, the Turiya by itself is not of a fourfold nature, but only three, excluding the Turiya Turiya. This threefold nature of the Turiya may be explained thus. As there are distinctions in external objects, the knower of Brahman perceives them with his senses, but without distinction. This state is the Turiya Jagarana. The Atman who experiences this state individually is the Turiya Vishva, collectively it is the Turiya Viraj. Partly individual, partly collective, it is Avikalpa Utir. When the knower of Brahman, with all sense activity abated, perceives the oneness of the self with Brahman by his mind alone, it is the state of Turiya Svapna. The Atman who experiences this is the Turiya Taijasa. When the person is in directionless deep meditation, Nirvikalpa Samadhi, and remains as if in a state of suspended animation, it is the state of Turiya Susti, and the experiencing Atman is the Turiya Prajna. Here is the distinct precept, that the Turiya Turiya is not at any time gross wisdom, nor indeed the subtle sentience, nor pure consciousness, nor anything else. It is not non-consciousness, nor of both gross and subtle consciousness, nor exclusive consciousness, and is never perceptible. It cannot be defined, cannot be grasped, is incapable of being expressed, is beyond thought, is incapable of being given a name, is also the essence of the conviction in the one Atman, is the annihilation of the worldly life, is quiescent, is the auspicious one, and is the non-dual one. This the knowers of Brahman consider as the fourth, the Turiya Turiya. It is the same as the Brahman Pranava. This should be realized and not any other called Turiya. This is the prop to the seekers after liberation, as the sun. It is self-effulgent. It is the ether of Brahman. It always shines as the transcendent Brahman. And there we go. There's a slightly easier read for you. All right. Thank you for joining me in this little journey.